Coach, oftentimes as leaders, we underestimate our value. And today's guest did a great job of explaining how we can overcome that.
Yeah, and he also talked so much about making connections. And I love the line he shared: feel welcome to reach out.
This is the Limitless Leadership Lounge, where Coach and John learn along with you from some of the world's most decorated leaders. Recently promoted, let's sharpen the saw together.
Do you have trouble sharing your fees with others? If you do, here's a good guess for you. If you hesitate when it's time to name your fee, you don't have a confidence problem. You have a value definition problem. That's where our great guest, John Ray, and he has a lot of skills to help you in this area as well as other. He works with consultants, coaches, CPAs, attorneys, and executives that are tired of second guessing their fees and discounting because their pricing conversation gets uncomfortable and writing proposals that describe effort instead of outcomes. His core belief is simple: your clients usually see more value in your work than you do. He also has written a great book, The Generosity Mindset, which I'm sure we'll delve into a little bit. John is married to Dr. Monica Ray, a fantastic educator, and they have a blended family of 5 children, 5 grandchildren, and of course, 5 pets. Without further ado, let's welcome John Ray to the Limitless Leadership Lounge.
Coach Jim, thank you so much for having me on. I'm delighted to be with you and John on your show.
So let's get right into it, because one of the things that when I was researching you, you talked about trust. So can you give us 2 or 3 ideas on how you would help a leader build trust with his team, or his or her team or organization?
I know this answer will come as a surprise to you, given the build up about the generosity mindset, but making it about others and putting others' interests first. It's just amazing what you can accomplish if you do that. And certainly it builds trust. And if you want to really be effective in getting what you want, start with what others want first and blend that into the overall goal of the organization. Another suggestion I'd make is learn to ask great questions. Questions are trust builders. And when we ask questions more than we make declarations, when we're genuinely interested in the answers that others give us and the perspectives that others give us, we build trust. Even if they don't have the answer, they're glad to get consulted. And so that's another suggestion I'd make in terms of learning to ask great questions.
Hey, John, I'm going to interrupt just because questions, I'm totally with you. Could you give us maybe 1 or 2 examples you found has been a great question?
Yeah, here's the one that's a general one. Learn how to ask, say more about that, or make that statement. Say more about that. Tell me more. When somebody gives you an answer that maybe feels a little stock, a little short, say more about that. Tell me more. I'm interested. And when you lean in that, it's amazing what you can learn and what people will tell you. You're signaling that you do want to know more and you're genuinely interested.
Yeah, I'm going to put this into practice right away, John. Say more about that, especially when it comes to questions being trust builders. Why is there such a connection between asking better questions and building trust?
Part of it is you are signaling care, as I mentioned. You're also signaling that you're secure in your own self, and your self-image is not dependent on what you've got to say. And that's a big trust builder for people.
Point.
You're making it not about your agenda, but theirs. And in a world where there is so much, I'll say, carnival barking, there is so much of that people are subjected to every day. And what a relief that you're giving someone when you're willing to sit and listen to them. A lot of people, you're giving them a huge gift that they don't ordinarily receive.
Well, John, I introduced the show about people having trouble with fees, and you really struck a chord because I'm in professional speaking, and I really struggled early on what should I charge and all that. Can you take us through a story of working with a client and share how you will help that person be able to be more confident in sharing their fees and getting the fees that they believe they're worth.
Yeah, absolutely. I love sharing these stories. So I worked with a company that provides senior move management services. Now, when you think about moving seniors, that has a lot more emotional tenor to it than just if someone's moving me across the country or someone that's used to moving and maybe has done a lot of it. For some of those seniors, this is the last move they'll ever make when they're going to assisted living, let's say. So it has a high emotional issue. And so that's what this company does. They work with seniors and their adult children to provide these services. They were charging basically what you might say what the typical moving company might charge. It was all about what are you charging versus what ABC Moving Company is charging. There wasn't a lot of differentiation. And what we talked about was just how special it was that in terms of what they did for people. And it wasn't just about the move, it was providing emotional security during that move. Sometimes being able to listen, speaking of listening, asking questions and listening, just be able to listen to some of the stories that seniors might want to tell about some of these possessions that they're giving up because they've got to downsize. And it's tough. And what we came up with were a much better way for this company to talk about their services and what they do. The needs, the emotional needs that they feel that go way beyond just the physical moving piece of what they do. And when you talk in those terms, what you're doing is you're touching buyers right where they live, where they're interested, and you're differentiating yourself relative to others. That alone helps your pricing, your ability to price. And what this lady told me recently was that she had someone who had gone out and gotten the usual 3 bids on a moving company. And she said, this person came back to me and said, you were the most expensive of the 3, and we selected you anyway because of the emotional care that you seem to have for your clients. And that was really important for me and my mom.
Wow, that's really cool. And you talk about the importance of understanding your value. And that's not just what we think our value is, but our value from the clients or the prospect's perspective. So would you say it is true that oftentimes we undervalue ourselves, and what can we do to make sure that we place the correct value on our own services?
Part of it is getting out of our own mindsets, right? And this is where I talk about how being of a generosity mindset helps you do that. These mindsets that we have that hold us back are things like imposter syndrome and comparison. I'll never be like that person, or inadequacy. I'm just not cut out for this, and it's just a matter of time before everybody else figures that out. Those mindsets are difficult. And I think what we need to do is get out of our own heads and get into the heads of our clients, because exactly what you said, John, they see more value in us than we see ourselves. And the reason for that is it's because of a lot of the intangible reasons that they do business with us that have to do with how we deliver the services that we deliver and what they are looking for that go beyond just the product or service. Let me give you an example. I've got a friend of mine here. I'm in the Atlanta area. She has a chain of 3 bakery locations. And when someone asks her what, she doesn't say, we bake cakes. She says, we deliver joy. She is surrounded by big box retailers that sell sheet cakes, and she has a premium price relative to what she's able to charge because she sells joy. Anybody can sell a cake. It's another thing to sell joy. You're touching people where they live. That's why you have a cake, is to bring joy to that celebration. So it's how we talk about what we do, and then how we ask questions of our clients to see where they see value and what they were looking for.
Well said, John. That's a great example. And let's dig a little deeper because the sales process has to do with influence. And I believe in authentic influence. So, what would, if you were to drill down and advise a leader on how they can influence people in a positive way and not in a manipulative way, what would be one, two, maybe three things you would advise that leader to be more powerful with your influence?
I think let's talk about what influence really means, at least for me.
Yeah.
Jim, let's do that. Influence is not just about what I want to get someone else to do. See, I think that's the problem we have in defining this word. It's really about how am I going to build the esprit de corps, the common goal that helps this organization or helps the bigger goal that I have for whatever I'm trying to get done. And the first way to get that done is to connect people's own needs with that goal and how they can be a part of that goal. So when you start there, influence, our traditional influence, our definition of influence really takes care of itself, does it not? We can get what we're looking for much faster if we're also, first and foremost, looking out for the needs of others and using those needs as part of just the bigger goal. Let me give you an example. When you've got a young person in an organization and all young people are looking for personal development, they want to get to the next level, right? So how is this initiative that we're in the middle of, how does it advance your personal development goals? This is what I want to see for you out of this initiative, the kind of experience I want you to gain out of this initiative. It connects it to that person individually.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. And John, I know we're talking to a lot of business owners when it comes to pricing, but also there's also team members checking this out too, and people who might not feel like they're cut out to be entrepreneurs, but work in a business. So tell us what ways that they can build trust with their leader from the opposite perspective.
Well, always focus on value. When I started my career, I started with a firm that had started in 1927. Now, 2 years later, of course, the bottom fell out, the Great Depression, right? And they survived it. And they survived it because the founder of that organization said that his goal every day was to be the last fellow to turn the lights off. That was his goal every day, was to be that person. And when you provide more value than is expected, and that doesn't mean you have to work incessantly. It just means that you're delivering, the quality of what you're delivering is of high value, that you're going the extra mile. And all these are cliches because they're true. They're true. That's why we say them over and over again, because if you can provide more value and be the person that has the highest gap between the value you provide and what you're getting in compensation, then the sky's the limit for you. And if that organization that you're in can't figure that out, then others will.
Mm-hmm.
It's well said. It's interesting because I read Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara, and I was listening to his being interviewed, and the one thing that fascinated me that goes along with what you were talking about of value is how they analyzed every touch point with the customer for their restaurant and how they could add more value. Very powerful what you said there, John. And speaking of value, because we were fortunate to have Bob Burg, one of the co-authors of The Go-Giver, and I know that's one of your favorite books. Tell us a little bit about why you enjoy that book and why people should read that.
Bob Burg is my hero. I don't mind saying that. And there's a whole series of those books. There's
Right.
The Go-Giver, as you well know, there's The Go-Giver, The Go-Giver Leader, Go-Giver Sales. And so I encourage everybody to read all of them. But I think what he and his co-author, John David Mann, do in those books is they tell stories that make this easy to understand and relatable. And I think that's the probably the success of it right there. But one of the missing things that I think a lot of us that we need to hear when we're trying to practice the Go-Giver philosophy is be ready to receive. It's not just about giving, it's about giving, but being ready to receive, not discounting ourselves. For example, when someone gives us a compliment, don't say, oh, anyone could do it. Just say, thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you. Be ready to receive. And I think that's one of the messages in the Go-Giver that I particularly love, Jim.
So we gotta have a balance between, obviously humility is so important, but not discounting ourselves. And that goes back to our pricing conversation too. I think a lot of people might underprice themselves to be competitive and maybe to be humble, but what happens is you end up undercutting the value there. So tell us, as far as those business owners, because a lot of people, we think that the lower price always wins. You've already shared a couple of powerful stories of why the lower price doesn't always win. What else would you share with business owners to make them confident about their price point?
If you have value conversations, that's not my term, that's a term that's been around quite a while. If you have conversations that focus on the value the clients see, and you have talked to them in terms of, why is it we're having this meeting? What is it you're looking for out of your business that goes beyond the service that I provide? What are your needs, hopes, wants, and desires? The big picture kind of goals. When you understand where clients see value, then you can lean into that. And that is a much better place to be when it comes to trying to set your prices than sitting around with all those mindsets I mentioned earlier that hold you back, because that really gets into where clients see more value in us than we see ourselves. Clients will tell you these things if you ask. The problem is we don't ask, and we don't have an effective enough conversation with clients to understand where they see value. And that's where the disconnect is, I think, John.
Yeah, good point.
I got to delve into, John, because you have such experience in the podcasting world. If I read it, I think it's 1,200 or more between radio and podcasts. So I'm curious, this is a two-part question. Part one is, what would you recommend to leaders, to whether it's their company or just individually, to start a podcast? And if so, how can they be able to develop and create an effective podcast?
I'm a big believer that every professional service provider should have a podcast. So consultant, coach, fractional executive should have a podcast. And part of why I believe that is I believe a podcast can be an effective business development tool. I think the problem that a lot of people have when it comes to a podcast is they think it's all about broadcasting what they think and what they do. Now, I love my CPA friends, but I can't imagine a more boring podcast than hearing what the changes in the depreciation schedule are going to do to our taxes for 2026. I just can't, I find that hard to even hit the button to play it, much less to get through it. I'm being slightly cheeky here, but the point is that when you make it about others, when you create a platform and celebrate others, it will come back to you. And I would contend that if you want to serve, let's just say the Left-Handed House Painters Association, if that's your core client, left-handed house painters, then make your show about left-handed house painters. It doesn't matter what you do, whether you're providing CPA services or consulting or whatever you do. If you create a show around left-handed house painters and become the media voice in the middle of that tribe and celebrate that tribe and everything that they do and all the top left-handed house painters and, you know, all the people that serve that industry, you will get business from that tribe because people see you celebrating them and they will come back to you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And John, my brand Story Trust Media is all about helping entrepreneurs launch those podcasts and helping them build trust with the content that they create. And that's a key component. You mentioned anybody can make a podcast, but how does content build trust? That's something that I'm fascinated with the study of. So after over 1,200 episodes, how do you feel that your show and all the media appearances that you've done has helped build trust with your audience?
I think this is what others say, and what others say is a lot more important than what I say about it. But what happens for me is when I get someone on a show and the mics go off and they say, wow, that was so much fun, and you made this so easy. It was such a joy to talk to you. See, I've got a deep relationship at that point. And that, I think, is what you're looking for. It's because when people, yes, it is my show when I'm hosting that show, but I never forget that no one is going to hit play unless they're interested in that guest.
Right.
So they're not interested in just listening to me yammer on, and they're not there to listen to the quality of my questions. They want to hear the answers. And so my job is to ask the kind of questions that get to the answers and get out of the way and let that guest answer. So I think that's what I have learned, is that if I make it about the guest, then I have no problems.
Yeah. Coach and I, we can learn a thing from John here.
Y'all are doing wonderfully. I love the way you do what you do. So
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, social proof is so big in whether you call it the selling process, influencing. But I know one of the areas, it was a challenge for me early in my career, and I know a lot of people I talk to have challenge asking for social proof, usually through some kind of testimonial. Do you have any advice that you would give to leaders to create that trust by finding ways that they can have that social proof through different types of testimonials?
Yeah, first thing is ask for them. That's part of the problem that we as business owners have, Jim, is we don't ask for them, and particularly at the right time. Yeah. When somebody says, wow, what a fantastic speech you gave. This was tremendous. Normally, what do? We say thank you, and that's right. The right thing to say.
Yeah.
But what about thank you? Would you mind documenting that in a testimonial? I'd really appreciate that, and it'd help others hear that same message you heard. And none of us have enough testimonials relative to the feedback that we get from the clients that we work for. So I think that's a big one right there, is just asking.
Yeah, it's simple but true. I think of how many people I've worked with who are satisfied, but I never asked them to write a review. And you see, you've created a to-do for me after our conversation here. John,
let me give you one more tip if I can on that,
please.
John.
Yeah.
So when you go ask, what's the biggest problem that happens? People don't follow up. Why don't they follow up? It's because they've got blank screen syndrome. See, they don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And so my suggestion is tell them that you're happy to draft up a little review based on what they've told you. And if they like it, they can edit it. We can do whatever they want to, but it makes it easier for them. And all they've got to do is make whatever changes they want to make and post it on LinkedIn or Google or wherever. If you do that for people, first of all, it's not your review. You didn't write it. They are the ones that have to post it. It becomes their review. So get over that. That's not the issue. And if they're not going to post anything they don't agree with and they don't approve, try that. And I think what you'll have is a lot of people take you up on that and make it easier for you to get reviews. And this is a way to get more effective reviews instead of the reviews that just say, hey, John's a great guy or Jim's a great speaker. You want something a little more deep than that, right? Hey. So when you're writing the review, you get that.
Yeah. Oh, said. And I know, so 1,200 conversations has clearly made you a much better communicator, podcast, radio host. Was there a time, we'd love to hear a story of a time that maybe one of those 1,200 conversations, you didn't expect it to go anywhere. You didn't expect it to be a great business development tool or a long lasting relationship or any sort of benefit from the conversation, but it really surprised you? Because I know I've had a few of those. Tell us a time when that happened to you.
Yeah, I have had, you never know who is listening, right? John, you know this, there's probably the worst lies that can be told are podcast stat listener lies in terms of how many people are listening, because we don't know for certain. And so you never really know who is out there because it's a one direction media, and there's really not an effective way to get wide scale feedback. But when I get, as I had recently, I had a client sign up with me who had heard what I asked them. I said, what made you decide to pick up the phone and get in touch with me? And he says, it took us a while to figure out who we wanted to work with, but I loved the way you talk on your podcast and the way you address some of the concerns that we have. And that's what got us over the edge. See, that's the thing. Podcasts are somewhat of an audition. People are looking at a podcast and listening, and whether you know it or not, you're auditioning in some cases to work for them, whether it's as a speaker or a consultant or whatever. They want to hear how you talk. They want to hear how you interact with others. And there's no better way for them to figure that out than listening to your podcast.
Brilliant. Yeah, exactly right.
Well said. But Jed, I've heard this over the years, and I think there's some real truth that words matter, right? Mm-hmm. So is there any like key words or the famous phrase that pays that you recommend people be cognizant of when they're communicating with others?
Oh, wow. How long is this show? I've got all sorts of things that I've learned over time, and sometimes the hard way. You know what? I'll give you a couple of quick ones. One that for me, I learned in a lot of interactions I've had with folks that are outside the United States, and particularly from Hispanic, Latin American cultures. One of the things in communications that's very important to do is just to express concern and interest in how are you doing, and I hope all is well, and how's your family, and that kind of thing before you get down to business. In the U.S., we are so focused on the business that we sometimes just skate right past something as simple as, hey, last time we talked, I was hearing about your son and what he was up to in school or whatever. Tell me, how's all that turned out? When you start out a conversation like that, it goes a whole lot different direction than when you just jump into business. Mm-hmm. So there's one thing. The other thing, and this is something on my mind here recently, because Richard Weilman, who's fantastic writer, speaker, talks about client service. And one of the things he talks about is, instead of saying, don't hesitate to get in touch, nobody gets in touch with a statement like that. What he says is, feel welcome to reach out. Feel welcome. And be welcoming. Don't just use the same phrase everyone else uses. Use the one that gives people a welcome to whatever it is their issue is and whatever their concern is. Feel welcome to be in touch.
Yeah, I love that, because it's not a negative. It's not don't hesitate to. It's, hey, actually feel welcome. So that's a really good phrase. How about for leaders too? Because we're talking a lot about entrepreneurs and business owners who are in front of potential clients, but then also leaders, the way they communicate with their team too, building trust has got to start with those personal relationships. How do we make sure that our communication with our team members or prospects is genuine, and that, we didn't just write down a note to follow up with so-and-so about their son, but we actually mean it. We actually want to build that authentic relationship.
It's all in the delivery, but I would say there's nothing wrong with writing down something, about, hey, I want to make sure I follow up with Sally about her son.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with writing that down. That's what we have CRMs for. It's what we have calendars for. There's nothing wrong with that. The issue is just in the delivery and making sure that it's not a checked box, but something where you're genuinely interested. One way to show genuine interest is to do this follow up in unexpected ways, to show up in unexpected places. Presence is a thing. Presence is a thing. When you're present in ways that surprise people, that has a lot of value as well.
Yeah. So even just commenting on LinkedIn posts, for example, that's a presence. Do you have any other thoughts? Maybe I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. Do you have any other ideas to be present in some more unexpected ways?
I keep a list of an Excel spreadsheet of what I call connections and touches. And that is my way of tracking how I'm doing with this when I'm reaching out to people and what the nature of that was. So if I have a lunch or a coffee or even comment on their post on LinkedIn, let's say, but send folks an article, not about you, but about what they're interested in. Hey, I saw this article. I ran across this article, and I thought you might be interested in it if you haven't already seen it. I'd love your thoughts on it. When you do that, you're trying to help folks make connections with between two people that need to know each other. And do this in a way, I've got a very specific way that I do this. I reach out to both parties before I make the connection. And people know this about me. If I'm about to introduce Jim to John, then I'm going to reach out to Jim and say, hey, here's the deal about John. I want you to know who he is and why I'm introducing you. And I get permission from Jim. And then I get the same from John. And Jim already knows that I'm going to do that. So it may take a few days for me to get in touch with John. But the point is, when I do that, what have I done? I've made a much better connection when it finally gets made. But I've also reached out and touched base with Jim and John individually, and I've gotten an update on what they're up to. You see, there's just a whole lot that comes out of doing it that way. So those are just a few ideas on how to create connections and touches with people that go beyond a lot of the conventional wisdom.
Wow. John, we really appreciate your great insights, and we're getting close to the end, but I have one final question. I know John probably has one or two more, and we certainly want to give our audience opportunity to reach out to you. But my final question, let's delve into your book, The Generosity Mindset. What are 2 or 3 takeaways that you would like a reader to be able to learn from your reading your book?
We talked about the idea that clients see more value in us than we see ourselves. And the book dives into why that is, and then how to uncover that value that clients see, how to have a value conversation. So I think that is what you might call the big, hairy, audacious idea in the book. But the book itself is really a guide to how to apply go-giver principles, if you want to term it that way, or how to apply others first principles, servant leadership, whatever, however you want to term it, to a professional services practice, and how to thrive because of that. Because ultimately, it's about serving best fit clients, and it's about bringing joy to what you're doing. And most of the people that I work with, they've been in business a few years, and maybe they came out of corporate 5 years ago or 6 years ago or something like that, and they just aren't feeling the same joy they were when they first started their business. And what I think the big principle of the book is to bring joy back, and do it through serving the kind of clients you want and pricing in a way that reflects the value of the outcomes you deliver.
Yeah. Mindset is such a huge key piece of that, right? Because you have that scarcity mindset and you think there's not enough to go around and I have to compete on price. That's a big piece of that. So when it comes to helping your clients and readers have a more abundant mindset about their business. What are some suggestions that you give? Would there be, other than, of course, your great book, would there be other books, podcasts, just daily routines that we can help to facilitate that more abundant mindset?
Jim mentioned the Go Giver series. I love that series. I love Adam Grant's book, Give and Take. Terrific book on givers and takers and how givers thrive and how takers thrive only to a small extent. But yes, there are exceptions to this. And yeah, there are people that get a ways down the road by taking. And we seem to celebrate that a lot these days in this world. But the truth of the matter is there are exceptions to the rules. And that's the point Adam Grant makes in his great book, Give and Take. So that's another one I would recommend.
Yeah, and do they sleep well at night is the other question. Okay, they're successful, but how does that actually make them feel? John, we can't appreciate your time enough, but also tell us about that podcast and where we can find more of John Ray and some of the insightful conversations you have.
Thank you, Jim. John, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for a great conversation. So people can find me, my website, johnray.co. johnray.co. I'm also on LinkedIn. John Ray 1 is where you can connect with me. Feel welcome to do that. And my podcast is called The Price and Value Journey. So it is a journey, folks. We're always learning, and Price and Value Journey podcast.com is the place to go. And of course, I'm on all the usual places where you find your podcasts. So those are some ways to connect with me. And when you go to my website, I've got some free resources there, including how to have the questions to ask, sample questions to have a great value conversation. So feel welcome to go download those and be in touch with me if you have questions.
johnray.co, and more information down in the show notes below. John, thanks for your time today. We're excited to continue to see where your career leads you. And 1,200 episodes in, boy, we can't wait to see the next milestone that you're going to hit on the show.
Thank you, John. Jim, it's been a pleasure. Appreciate you and the great work you're doing.